On our broadcast tonight, On the Brink, Israelis and Palestinians running for cover, the heaviest fighting there in years as bomb shelters open and Israel calls up 40,000 reserves.
את השיגורים מהכיפת ברזל שאנחנו נמצאים כאן ממש מאחורינו. אנחנו מנסים לאתר, והנה אני רואה פיצוץ אחד שכבר היה, והנה הפיצוץ השני.
Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites, of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebo, and Ammon, and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, Asser also is joined with them. They hope in the children of Lot. Selah. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth.
We have just gotten word that an explosion has just happened. Our crews there just heard it, and now air raid sirens are going off. All of this as our crews listen, and just hours after a rocket reached Tel Aviv, and Israel put Hamas on notice, readying tens of thousands of Israeli troops for possible deployment. The two sides now closer to the breaking point, closer to ground war than we've seen in years. Just hours ago, air raid sirens sounded across Israel's commercial capital of Tel Aviv. Israeli media report the nation's Iron Dome defense system, as they call it, blew up a rocket over the city. That is the deepest that the Palestinian militants have penetrated in fighting that's seen the two sides trade hundreds of rocket strikes in just days. Now, Israel has deployed troops to its border with the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. Defense officials, they've already sent more than 1,500 reservists, and another 40,000 are officially on call, raising the very real possibility of a ground assault. The fighting shatters 2 years of relative calm that's ended with the kidnapping and executions of 3 Israeli teenagers. In a suspected revenge attack, investigators say several Israelis abducted a Palestinian teen, beat him, set him on fire, and left him to die. Militants in Gaza responded with more rocket fire and Israeli rockets on site, and it triggered a deadly back and forth that's escalated by the hour. Crowds of screaming people in the Gaza Strip scrambled for cover as blasts hit Palestinian cities. Cameras caught bloody survivors loading burned body parts onto stretchers. A Palestinian medical official claims the attacks killed at least 15 people. We'll show you where this is happening over here in the wall. You'll see the Gaza Strip looking west toward the Mediterranean Sea. And these are the towns that have been affected. Israeli troops have attacked homes of suspected Hamas fighters in major cities, all there. Those red dots, the red explosions you see all over the place, are where Palestinians have fired their rockets, including Netivot and Sderot on Gaza's edge. Both of those cities are right over here. You can see it's just a stone's throw away. A short time ago, Israeli officials reported an attempt by militants to invade southern Israel by sea. They say that they had killed 4 of the attackers who came ashore. Now the United States is responding. President Obama wrote an op-ed for an Israeli newspaper and called this a dangerous moment, which no doubt it is. The president wrote, all parties must protect the innocent and act with reasonableness and restraint, not vengeance and retribution. The president went on to write that peace is necessary and possible.
Peace is necessary and possible.
But today, a senior Israeli lawmaker said there are no plans at all for peace, not on the table today. He said that the fighting will not end in a day and that this is just the beginning. David Lee Miller is on Fox Top Story live in Jerusalem. And David Lee, it's my understanding you heard an explosion. What do you know?
Shepard, for the first time since this current conflict got underway, the city of Jerusalem came under rocket attack. It happened literally seconds ago. I could see from my vantage point overhead at least what appeared to be 2 rocket interceptions in the city of Jerusalem, populated areas. By our estimate, and this is only a rough estimate, there were at least 5 interceptions around the city of Jerusalem. Again, for the first time now, since this current conflict got underway, in fact, I'm now getting confirmation, there were 5 interceptions. The Iron Dome missile defense system, Shepard, is designed to target these incoming rockets that are going to land in populated areas, and that's exactly what happened just a few short moments ago. But it looks like Jerusalem, as well as the rest of the country, faces a very long night ahead. Shepard.
Yeah, you know, the last time there was a ground assault, there was a call-up of 30,000 Israeli reservists. This time, 40,000 have been called up. And I wonder what you're hearing there about the real possibility of a ground invasion.
At this point in time, most of the analysts would say it is not likely we are going to see a ground incursion. Yes, the government, the Israeli government, has said this is going to be an ongoing offensive. They have said that 40,000 reservists have been called up, but of those, only 1,000 have actually been mobilized. So there's a message here for the Israeli public to know that there could be a lengthy conflict at hand, but there's also a message here, Shepard, for the leadership in Gaza of Hamas. The Israeli government wants Hamas to know that it is serious. If the rocket attacks do not end, there will be a ground incursion, but that doesn't necessarily mean soon. And lastly, and very quickly, let me remind you that in 2012, the last time there was a conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, Israel made the same type of threats. There were tanks and troops at the border, but there was a truce without any ground incursion taking place. The question now is, will history repeat itself, or will there be a ground incursion? Right now, it's too difficult to tell.
David Lee Miller in Jerusalem. We'll come back to him should there be more activity. Talk about the difference between then, when there was no ground incursion, and now, because the differences are significant, with Michael Singh, who joins us now on the Fox News desk. He's a former senior director for the Middle East Affairs at the National Security Council, currently managing director of the Washington Institute. I think it's worth mentioning now, we first got word of these interceptions of the rockets within seconds of going on the air at 3 o'clock Eastern time. That's 10 p.m. local time in Israel. That's when the local news comes on. Could that be happenstance? It could be. But one thing we've learned over there is there's no such thing as happenstance. The Hamas is sending messages just as Israel sends messages.
Well, that's right. I mean, Hamas, in response to what Israel is doing there in the Gaza Strip, has fired these rockets as far as Tel Aviv, as far as Jerusalem. And remember, there in Jerusalem, the population is quite mixed. You have Palestinians and Arabs living right next to the Jewish population. And so these rockets, which are inaccurate, could just as easily land in the Palestinian or Arab areas. We've seen, just like in 2008, just like in 2012, Hamas is sort of ready to sort of test Israel, to sort of push this further into Israeli territory.
A friend asked me today, why would Hamas do this now? What does Hamas have to gain?
Well, it's a combustible situation there right now, because you have had these killings of teenagers on both sides, horrific killings on both sides. You've had the breakdown in the peace process. And, of course, you have this situation in the region with jihadist groups on the move. And perhaps for Hamas, there's a little bit of desire to sort of pull the attention back to itself and away from some of these other jihadist groups.
There's a situation now which is different than 2012 that is concerning to a lot of analysts. And it is that the Israeli government is facing a lot of pressure from the right, a whole lot of pressure. People whose word now is go in, stop this now. And at the same time, Hamas faces a lot of pressure as well from more radical extremists who've sort of taken over the spotlight. You'd think Hamas was very radical maybe 4 years ago. Now there are others who are more radical.
Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, the question is, can Hamas be deterred? I think one of Israel's objectives in this type of campaign is to not just eradicate some of Hamas's capabilities, but to deter Hamas from doing this again. We're only in the first or second day. The 2012 Operation Pillar of Defense went 8 days. In 2008, when you did have the ground incursion, that went for 3 weeks. And so I think it's really too soon to tell exactly how Hamas is going to behave.
And that ground incursion in 2008, I think history reflects, and at the time many were observing, did not go well for Israel. In fact, it went poorly, especially for the Golani Brigade.
Well, anytime you go in on the ground, there's going to be higher costs on both sides. You're going to find yourself in a situation which may be difficult to extricate yourself from. And so, again, I think this will be a big question, a big decision for Israel. Will, in fact, it go in on the ground like it did in 2008, or will it just be an air campaign?
And if that happens, would we anticipate that it would be soon? The rhetoric has suggested that this is nowhere near over.
Well, I think it is. It's hard to say. I mean, I think it isn't near over. As I said, last time, it was over a week. The time before that, 3 weeks. And when exactly that decision would be made and sort of how it's made is a tough question to answer right now. But I think that, Israel has to have clear objectives. I'm sure it does have objectives in mind. And the question is, what will it take to accomplish those objectives?
I wonder what they are. Michael Singh, it's nice to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shep.
We begin in the Middle East, where a major Israeli offensive against militants in Gaza may be starting. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says, quote, "It's time to take the gloves off." Violence has been spiraling since the murders of 3 Israeli teens and a Palestinian boy. Let's go live now to CCTV's Roy Rettenberg, who is live in Tel Aviv. And Roy, let's start with the casualties. At least 14 Palestinians dead. What more can you tell us?
Indeed, Elaine, and I should update you that in the last few minutes here, we also heard sirens in Tel Aviv, and as I was making my way over here, I looked up and saw one of those missiles coming towards us, one of those what appears to be the Fajr 5 projectiles that they've been using coming towards us, and then I saw a few seconds later an explosion, which I can assume to be the Iron Dome, the so-called defense shield, preventing it from hitting this area. I understand there was another one. We still haven't found out what's happened with that. This, of course, appears to be in retaliation for a day of Israeli strikes in Gaza. We understand that at least 14 people have been killed. We also understand that 4 or 5 Hamas operatives were killed after they managed to approach or even make landing at Zikim Beach, an Israeli beach in southern Israel, north of the Gaza border. We understand there was an operation there that included and injured at least 1 Israeli soldier. Of course, a lot of this frustration now coming from Gaza. People say that not just Hamas operatives are being targeted, but innocent civilians. We know that a number of homes were destroyed, and Palestinians do say, however, that some actually received phone calls to evacuate their homes before those airstrikes, quickly escalating into a very serious situation here, Elaine.
And with the information you just shared with us, do you think there's now a clearer indication that ground troops might go in?
Well, at the same time, I should also tell you that the Israeli Security Cabinet is holding an emergency session tonight here, just about 10 p.m. here local time. Earlier in the day, we understood that the cabinet approved some 40,000 additional reservists to be called upon. That's in addition to the 1,500 that were called upon yesterday. This at least sends a message that they might be preparing for a ground offensive. The defense minister here saying that Israel will deal with Hamas and finish Hamas off either by air or by ground, but again, not yet an indication that Israel plans to go in by ground. The last escalation we saw of this scale was in November of 2012, of course. Now, many residents in the south that have been staying quite close to the shelters, not just now, but for days and weeks and even months, say they want this to end, and they're putting the pressure on the government to act, and to act tough.
All right, CCTV's Roy Rettenberg with the very latest from Tel Aviv. Thanks for that.
הוא יצא מהשיח, ודאי. הוא נע דרומה. פגיעות! הופקדה פגיעה, חיסול ודאי של הכל, יפה מאוד.
For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Eshkol a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Woe unto the inhabitants of the sea coast, the nation of the Kerethites. The word of the Lord is against you. O Canaan, the land of the Philistines, I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. And the sea coast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds, and folds for flocks. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed thereupon. In the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening. For the Lord their God shall visit them, and turn away their captivity.
We're covering a breaking news situation as the skies over Israel have lit up tonight. Sirens have sounded, and Israelis have been told they have between 15 seconds and 1 minute to run to shelter and avoid rockets coming in, launched by Hamas in this escalation of violence that many fear could easily become the next war fought in that region of constant troubles. Video came into us tonight showing a wedding in Israel interrupted by sirens. When they sound, people scatter as they're told to, as incoming rockets trigger outgoing Israeli missiles meant to destroy them in midair. Tonight there are missile launches and airstrikes underway. Israel has called up many reservists. This is a major escalation. We begin there tonight. NBC's Ayman Mohyeldin is in Tel Aviv. Ayman, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. It's been a few hours since the sirens here in Tel Aviv have gone off, but make no mistake about it, this is a city and a country that is very much on edge. On the first day of Operation Protective Edge, more than 100 rockets were fired into Israel, and Israel has fired back into Gaza. Tonight, there is growing concern that neither side is ready to back down. There are sirens wailing across Israel over its two largest cities.
Look, wow.
Whoa. Missiles over Tel Aviv intercepted by the defense system the Israelis call the Iron Dome. But in Gaza, there were no sirens warning of Israel's assault on the Strip. A woman escaping with her children. A man is heard shouting, "Where is the world?" Others just running by the wounded. In the rubble of Israel's airstrike, a man is trapped. With a little help, he is rescued. The might of Israel's military unleashed on Gaza, targeting suspected launching sites and the home of suspected militants. Authorities there saying this one strike killed 7, including 3 children.
This future will be very bad and very harsh for us. But what we can do?
Hamas says it's prepared to fight. Today, the Israeli military released this video it says showed Palestinian fighters launching a daring amphibious assault by storming an Israeli beachhead before they were killed by the army. The Israeli military has called up thousands of reserve soldiers, and the prime minister has told the military to take the gloves off, an indication that Israel is going on a war footing. Families in southern Israel are preparing for the worst. Israel Linden's family is spending their nights in this crammed bomb shelter that they've made look like a bedroom with toys for their children.
Last night we all slept here.
You all slept here last night?
Yeah, it was several times there were Qassam rockets.
Tonight, there's no let-up from either side as missiles and rockets light up the skies. Now, this evening, Israeli officials are preparing the country, raising alert levels at hospitals, at the same time opening bomb shelters and calling up reserves. But there is growing concern that these rockets now reaching Jerusalem and here in Tel Aviv can continue throughout the course of the next several days, as Hamas has already demonstrated. And tonight, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning the country this could be a long and tough operation. Brian?
Ayman Mohyeldin from Tel Aviv on this rapidly changing situation tonight. Ayman, thanks.
The Fox News of Israel reportedly intercepting a rocket from Gaza militants, this over Jerusalem. Hamas reportedly says it fired a rocket toward Haifa, which is in northern Israel, in the deepest strike of the attacks from the Gaza Strip. You can hear the air raid sirens in the background. Listen here. Jerusalem, of course, just a few dozen miles to the northeast, or I should say northeast of Gaza. Military officials in Israel say they also stopped Hamas fighters who tried to attack by sea. The Israeli military has hit more than 100 sites in the Gaza Strip today alone, and 40,000 reservists are on call for a possible ground invasion. Let's get back to David Lee Miller, who's live in Jerusalem. David Lee, I'm getting this report. A Haaretz, a newspaper reporter there, is quoting Israel's Channel 1 as saying that at least one rocket has struck in a Jerusalem suburb. What do you know?
Well, Shepard, we're prohibited from mentioning specific locations, but there are local media reports that one of the rockets hit apparently an empty house. The police here in Jerusalem cannot confirm this report, but as you mentioned, we are hearing this from local media. Just a few moments ago, about 25 minutes ago, here in Jerusalem, we heard the air raid sirens, and then overhead, we saw what appeared to be 5 rockets intercepted. And what's important to underscore here is they were all intercepted by the Iron Dome missile defense system. Without that system, Shepard, it is very likely we could have seen some very serious injuries, not just here in Jerusalem, but throughout the country. In just the last few minutes, Shepard, since your show got on the air, there have been approximately 30 rocket attacks alone fired from Gaza. And a Hamas spokesman said just a few moments ago that they have, quoting him now, more surprises in store for Israel. So the country here, very, very much on edge.
David Lee, so that our viewers understand, these are the rockets, Katyusha rockets and of the like, that can't really be guided? They just sort of fire them off indiscriminately? Or is this another kind of rocket because it's gone farther?
These are a variety of different rockets, but you're right, they all have one thing in common. They are essentially unguided missiles. They are fired by the militants, and they can't be very well targeted. They said earlier, Hamas, they were going to target the airport, but they really don't have that capability. They sort of cross their fingers and fire these rockets. But so far today alone, we've seen more than 100, and only one light injury was caused by the rocket. Someone had a shrapnel wound to their foot. A lot of Israelis suffer from anxiety, but again, the Iron Dome system, very successful.
David Lee Miller live in Jerusalem, and I should report this as well. Earlier, we received official word that the Israelis had intercepted some sort of rocket over Tel Aviv. Well, this is brand new, and we just got it. A source of one of our producers on the deck behind us, and a very good source, trusted source, says that he just heard approximately 4 explosions over Tel Aviv. Now look at the map, and you can see why this is so significant. For one thing, there can be a war going on in Israel's south, and in Tel Aviv, they're having coffee and don't realize it's happening, from personal experience. Today, something very different has just happened, according to the reporting of our producer's source. We now have word that some 4 explosions have happened over Tel Aviv. It is our belief, because of this source, that these rockets were intercepted over Tel Aviv. I expect that we'll hear more about this in the seconds and minutes ahead, but early word, not confirmed by Israeli authorities, of more explosions over Tel Aviv. And if this has happened, make no mistake, this is a very serious escalation, which history tells us will have significant consequences. This is far from over. Updates the moment we get them.